and like the grasshopper from Aesop's fables, many of you find yourselves anxious about where your next meal will come from, having to now go hat in hand and rely on your neighbors and countrymen for help in this dark and desperate time. You worry that you might not be able to pay next month's rent, that you will have to lay people off to keep your business from going under, or that you might even have to sell your possessions in order to cover your medical bills. Everything has suddenly become more complicated, more chaotic, more dangerous, and you rightly fear for yourselves and your families. However, unlike the lazy grasshopper, you've done the right thing all along. You are more like the ant, in that you worked hard, played by the rules, and so why are you still struggling, still suffering? You stored up for times like this, but now those savings are nearly gone because this winter of hardship and strife has lasted for nearly a year. Right now, 10 million of you can't get a job even though you desperately want one. In my own home state of New Jersey, 1 in 3 small businesses have closed down, and another third likely won't survive until spring. A few were lucky enough to time the market and make a killing in the most recent Wall Street shenanigans. But not you. You've been forced out of work by draconian government lockdowns, while politicians and megacorporations continue to wine and dine in the lap of luxury, lording their power and privilege over you. They tell you in so many words, rules for thee, but not for me, all while reassuring you that it's what's best for you, best for your family, best for your neighbors, your country, your world. Those in control have crippled businesses, schools, factories, sporting events, bars, clubs, libraries, theaters, resorts, parks, transportation, travel. All those things and places that keep society going or make life worth living have been shut down in arbitrary fashion. Your homes have been converted into micro-prisons, with you locked inside, only ever allowed to go out when your overlords tell you it's safe, as though you were free-range livestock waiting to be harvested for milk and meat. You've been told this is all good and necessary for your protection, that we must come together and do our part until help arrives, which in the abstract is true enough. And to your credit, many of you have gone along with it, because you are moved by a spirit of cooperation, generosity, and compassion towards your fellow man. You wish harm to no one. As compensation for your efforts, sweeping stimulus bills of unprecedented proportion have been put forward, stretching into the trillions of dollars. Your own money has been confiscated from you by force and fraud, and given back to you as though it were a divine gift from on high, and at 80 cents on the dollar no less. For this, you are expected to be grateful and satisfied, to be placated, and to go along willingly with whatever edicts the all-knowing elites deem necessary. It is, in fact, nothing more than a con and a bribe, a sophisticated shell game, one they think you're too stupid to see through, and they are counting on your ignorance and apathy in order to remain in control. Our country has struggled with debt crisis since its inception, doling out more than it takes in each year, even in good times. Yet now that we are in hard times, we are spending more and more with no end in sight, digging ourselves into an ever deeper hole. Presently, the United States federal government spends over 2/3 of its total budget just on welfare alone. This is more than even total defense spending, which at least has the benefit of being vaguely constitutional at its core, even if massive cuts there are also warranted. For decades now, we have lived like a shopaholic, putting all their tabs on the credit card, with little to no regard for the fact that, ultimately, the bill comes due. Even now, Politicians are urging still more spending in the form of economic stimulus, bailouts, and welfare programs, both social and corporate. An easy proposition for them, since they're not the ones who will wind up paying for it in the end, and thus they are able to continue buying you off with your own money. And we are told this is all for the good of our country and our world. Many of you have had to make the hard choice of taking handouts for the first time this past year in order to find relief from economic recession. But that well only runs so deep. We cannot continue to draw upon it forever. There is simply not enough money. I know many of you have been told otherwise, that this country
is awash in wealth and cash. It's just that it's not in your hands.
However, the bitter truth is that the math doesn't work out this way. Right now, had I the power and inclination to sign an executive order confiscating 100% of all the assets of the rich, it would barely be enough to sustain us for a single winter. And then what? What happens next year? Many of you, in the heat of the moment, might not care about the long term when you're just barely struggling to hold on in the short term. That feeling is understandable and relatable. However, it's short-sighted and foolish to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. It's foolish and suicidal to eat the rich in the here and now, because what will be left for tomorrow or the day after if you do not build something for yourself? From whence will you find relief then? Ultimately, what you want is not a handout, but a hand up. You want the opportunity to work and earn an honest living for yourself. To rise up, rather than tearing others down. You want dignity and liberty restored. You want the government to get out of your way and stop telling you what to do and what it thinks is best for you. Money makes the world go round, and the economy is like the heart of our society. Without it functioning and pumping money through our system, everything else fails. The body politic withers away and dies a slow and painful death. And once that happens, its people follow suit and slowly perish due to hunger and cold and disease, if not outright violence, as people fight over scarce resources needed to survive. That is the harsh truth of life, which people often forget when times are good and the weather is warm and there is plenty to go around. No one, left, right, or center, wants this, apart from maybe a handful of nihilistic accelerationists or sociopathic elitists in the ruling class with enough wealth and power to secure themselves and lord it over the rest of us. Those same people are the ones who now tell you it's in your best interests to stay in your homes and starve to death. And here, take this pellet of food, and we'll tell you when it's safe to come out. They treat you as less than children. They treat you like animals waiting to be slaughtered, and that is how they've always viewed you. It's time to stand up and take your destiny back into your own hands. The government can no longer be relied upon to protect and serve you, if indeed it ever could. And how long will you wait for them before you take action? You might say, well, yes, but what about this pandemic? What about this crisis or that imminent threat? Surely this time is different, and we must band together to do our part to stop it here and now, because we care about people, and think of the poor, the sick, the elderly, and the children. And I hear you. You are a good person for asking that, and thinking in those terms ultimately comes from a good place. However, in difficult times like this, we can ill afford to be naively led around by our emotions, by those who would exploit our compassion for their own personal gain. Moreover, the real world is such that we do not have just one imminent threat to contend with, but several coming at us at the same time. Like a hospital emergency room, our financial system is already overloaded, with more and more patients entering in every day. At some point, tough decisions must be made in order to accomplish the greatest possible good for the greatest number of people. The threat of disease, of starvation, of environmental damage, of civil unrest, of war, of material shortages, of economic collapse, of natural disasters, on top of all the other myriad problems of day-to-day living. To say nothing of the next great unseen calamity just around the corner that we cannot envision today. These are the problems we must contend with in the real world. We cannot pour all of our resources into combating just one with reckless abandon, running up the credit card endlessly, without becoming blindsided and falling victim to one or more of the others. If we skewer our economy to fight this pandemic, then we're just setting our people up to die of poverty, depression, and anxiety instead. We cannot fend off just one of the four horsemen. We must balance our efforts to combat them all simultaneously. And that is hard. It's very hard. So hard that no single person or entity on their own can manage it. No single person or entity has all the answers, all the pieces of the puzzle. Not business, not government, not academia. And this is why it has yet to be fixed. Because we're looking for solutions in all the wrong places. We keep looking upward and outward, instead of looking inward. To solve complex problems such as this requires sacrifice, patience, a tightening of our belts, and a willingness to accept the harsh truth that yes, some people are going to die no matter what we do, even in the best-case scenario. We are not God. We cannot fend off the Reaper forever. All we have control over is which people die, how many, when, where, and from what. We will, of course, aim to save as many lives and businesses as we can to the best of our knowledge and ability, always seeking to improve and learning from our mistakes as we go along into uncharted territory. But understand that no matter what anyone does, we cannot realistically save everyone. That's what makes this a crisis, and to think otherwise is naive utopianism. It's the attitude of the grasshopper in the peak of summer, when such luxury beliefs cost nothing to maintain. The ruling class are right about one thing, however. We are all in this together, and must each do our part to contribute what little we can in our own way. And that requires freeing you up to do the best that you can do with the information, resources, and tools at your disposal. It requires trusting you to do the right thing, trusting the people of this country to know what is best for themselves, trusting them to look left and right, to turn towards their neighbors and build up social bonds horizontally rather than vertically. What is best for you is what is best for America, because you are America. In the coming weeks, this administration shall be sharing some more practical steps that you can do right now to take action and rebuild your lives and this country. But for right now, we must first all get on the same page and recognize that we've become disoriented and deceived. We've gotten turned around and must now come together to face forward and move in the same direction. America is once again open for business. It's time to get back to work.